By the way, one of the latest Max Olson tweets from earlier today, notable players who got bumps in their ratings in the EA Sports College game, a video game. Max Olson joins us now on 365 Sports. Do you think when this first came out, they didn't have the ability to bump during the season, did they? Till now?
They did not. And, I think that we're obviously seeing the value of that. It's fun to see like the great players get boosted during the season. Ashton Jeanty is now one of the best players in the game, deservedly so. But I gotta say, guys, my mentions today are just filled with people fighting about Cam Ward versus Shadur Sanders. I did not expect that.
Well, I mean, are they?
They're 1 and 2.
Yeah.
When it comes to
kind of splitting
top quarter, yeah.
Wouldn't you be kind of splitting hairs with that?
Yeah, I mean, they're both extremely good. They're both they're the two best quarterbacks in the game. I don't know that there's any reason to be upset about where they're at, but that's the internet. So wasn't trying to troll anybody, but there you go.
Max, a rash of players, I say a rash, but a lot of them, and we talked about it a little bit, about opting out during the year and redshirting. You're the guy who follows the transfer portal better than anyone in the country. How does this affect, like Colin Lacy, who did this yesterday, is probably the best overall player this year to do this. How does this affect their recruiting right now since the portal rules have been changed? Like, can anybody, I mean, sure people are calling him, but what does his recruitment look like if he does decide, in fact, to leave Louisville?
Yeah, starting on October 1st, guys were able to start entering the transfer portal. So we've seen, I think, about 20 to 25 scholarship players already go in. And, the thing that stands out, obviously, is that the vast majority of those guys are players who have already transferred once in their career. So I think sometimes you're just having guys who transfer to a place, under recruiting promises or just a belief, hey, I'm going to go there, I'm going to be a starter, this is going to kind of fix things for me. And then you get to that place and, you're not playing the role you thought you would, or, in the case of Colin Lacy, he had a collarbone injury in fall camp. And so you think you're going there to be a 1,000-yard receiver and really blow up and be one of the best in the ACC, and then you fall behind a little bit in fall camp, and I think that's a move there to since you've got the redshirt season to try and get back. And I think you remember at this time of year too. That's an example of like, gosh, there's so many guys that are dealing with injuries, even if they're like currently playing, and so I think when you've got that extra year, I'm sure that factors in for these players and their parents and their reps and everything of like, man, what's the kind of the best way forward here? So I'd be curious to see if Colin Lacy's trying to stay at Louisville. I don't know, unless it's like really injury related. You don't see too many cases of a guy opting out and then just kind of, showing up again for winter workouts there in January.
Max started off talking a little about the Heisman. I mean, it's Travis Hunter and Ashton Jeanty as two of the top guys there, as you already mentioned as well. But Jeanty, with this Heisman campaign, like we heard Hunter kind of not criticizing him directly, but talking about, hey, running backs, like, they've had their Heisman, and like who's played and done multiple things like me. What do you think of Boise State and UNLV tomorrow? That's a matchup that's obviously got a little sizzle to it, and obviously will play a big role in whatever odds Ashton Jeanty has to become this unlikely Heisman.
Yeah, I fired up for that game. I think that's one of those games that, I think we would care about regardless, but I think it's probably one of those that you'd say, man, I think that's the college football playoff setup with the 12 teams is going to drive a lot more eyeballs to that game on Friday night, and I think that's really exciting. And UNLV, fascinating to see what kind of solutions they can come up with because, everybody spends all week trying to figure out how to slow down Ashton Jeanty, and just nothing works, even for Oregon and all the studs they have. So I think that, people want to see can Ashton Jeanty do it against better competition. I think that's just kind of be the knock on him is how difficult is the schedule he's played and stuff like that. And so can't wait to see how they do. And, UNLV is, they came up short in overtime against Syracuse, but, they've been winning out. Like that's a really good team that had all the drama in September, but Haj Malik Williams, the transfer, stepped in and did a great job at quarterback. And so, I think Barry Odom, is going to be a pretty hot candidate again here in a month. And this is a big opportunity for him and his program to, really make a statement.
One thing that Jeanty, if people do bring up who they're playing, I mean, from start to finish, 192 yards and 3 touchdowns against Oregon. That can't hurt him down the stretch.
No, and you got to factor. I mean, there's kind of some invisible stats there too, because there's 2 games that they won in blowouts where they did not play him in the second half, and so I think Spencer Danielson and his staff they've really been very intentional about this is about preserving Ashton Jeanty, keeping him healthy, keeping him fresh, because you're trying to play 14 games at Boise State this season, and so. To their credit, they've not gone out there and just kind of padded stats, which you could because the guy's unstoppable. So, I think that, and the stuff from Hunter, I get it. Like, I think we all want to see Travis Hunter healthy and playing at a high level on both sides of the ball. And what he does is special and does deserve special consideration. And he's one of those guys, kind of like, when we've seen like Lamar Jackson or Johnny Manziel, where it's like, regardless of where the team finishes, he's one of the best players in the country.
Max Olson with us on Thursdays at 4 o'clock from ESPN.
Max, A&M and LSU at Kyle Field. We just had Andrew Monaco on, the voice of the Aggies. It's going to be a blackout for A&M. LSU's in the all-whites. Both these teams are, I think, better than everybody thought they would be. How's this one shake out?
Yeah, I'm excited for that one. I think that Texas A&M really from that Missouri game on has been out to prove something. I think they've really kind of started to put it all together. I like the way that Connor Wigman's been playing, and I think that that's a team that's just gaining confidence under Mike Elko, and I think they have a chance to pull this off. LSU has been in a bunch of close games. I think that gives them some advantage here under pressure. Obviously, the way that they beat Ole Miss was a big step for that program, but it's a great quarterback matchup. I think Garrett Nussmeier is really still pretty underrated and is just, he can really sling it and is terrific. And I think that, I think the A&M defense is going to be a challenge for him. So I like A&M in this game. And I think that if the Aggies can get on a roll, man, we're setting up for an all-timer there when the Longhorns come to town.
Max, do the Cornhuskers cover the 25.5 point spread as they go to Columbus? I know that was rough last week. Your thoughts on Indiana and that performance, but also where Matt Rule and company find themselves? They just need one win, but obviously it wasn't in the cards last week, and it's probably not in the cards this week against the Buckeyes.
Yeah, I mean, that number probably wouldn't be quite that high if Nebraska had been able to keep it close with Indiana, but really, they just got beat up from start to finish by the Hoosiers, who are just so confident. I mean, that team is incredible to watch. I hope that Curtis Rourke can get healthy and get back pretty quickly here, because when they're firing on all cylinders, they're pretty dominant. So that's a fun team to watch. And I just think Nebraska, you got exposed in that one. And I'm sure Matt Rule is trying to push all the right buttons this week to try and get this team locked in. And underdog mentality and all that. I think they can keep it within the number, but man, I think this is a tough time to catch Ohio State when they've got they're coming off a bye week and they've got revenge on their mind from Morgan. They're out to make a statement.
Max, if they have one game that appears could get them to 6. Now, Wisconsin and Iowa have owned them for the most part, and Ohio State's a loss. And UCLA's a home game. If they throw up on themselves, even with how much we love Matt, I don't know if I can ever recover.
UCLA is like the one you got to win. I think if you find a way to lose that game, that would be really alarming. Let's not even think about it. But I think it's a bowl team. I think it's a bowl team, but I think it's and Indiana was not maybe representative of the progress they've made. That was a really big humbling that they got on the road there. But I think it's a Nebraska team that is going to be in close games the rest of the way here, besides maybe Ohio State. And we're going to find out, can you win more than you lose on those tight ones that are going to come down to it in the fourth, and that's where you need to see some experience and growth from Raiola and an offense that can be productive.
Max, I'm going to read a stat to you, and I need some therapy on it. We talked about it earlier, but this is from Tim Reynolds. There are 661 NCAA football programs in the country. There are 25 that have not scored more than 21 points in a game this season. 1 FCS school, 5 D2 schools, 18 D3 schools, 1 FBS school, and that's FSU. Why should I not move?
The only one?
Yes. Why should I not move to the desert, live in a cave, Obi-Wan Kenobi style?
Because it's too hard
You're
to
telling me, like Kent State is the worst team in the country, and even they've done it?
They did it last night?
Oh, my God.
Or Kennesaw State did this, yeah.
Let me ask you, if I could give you a chance, Paul, if you let's just wave the magic wand. We're going back to January. You get a do-over with this team. What would you fix?
I would not bring in DJU.
Okay.
I'd rather get somebody on the way up than the way down. And I would also let the coaches that got offers leave and hire guys who have regularly been in the playoff hunt onto the staff to recruit. That's what I would have done.
Fair.
Yeah.
Fair. Yeah.
I mean,
I think it's just one of those, and they were just in such a weird spot where it's like you have the playoff snub, so then you want to go reload, but obviously you lost so much NFL talent that you had to kind of assume it was going to be a rebuilding year. But I certainly, even in your sort of skeptical assessment of Florida State, you would never guess it would be this bad this season.
No, I mean, I would have thought that their offense would be bad if they were only scoring 21, right? That's what I thought the bottom was. Oh, no. There is no bottom. There is no bottom. It's just a pit of despair, Max.
It's crazy to think, too, that when it came down to it, I mean, Cam Ward almost picked, it was Miami versus Florida State. And if he were at Florida State right now, he'd be getting crushed.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he probably –
he would not be having a good time.
Yeah. Yeah, he probably looked and said, man, Jordan Travis is really good, but that offensive line at Miami is actually a lot better, and people didn't realize it because they haven't had a good quarterback in a decade.
Yeah, that's who do they have this week? Pretty big one, right?
Well, Miami and FSU. That's what happens.
Used to be a big game.
Used to be, yeah.
I didn't even realize that was this weekend.
Preseason, I would have said a lot of eyeballs on that game. Maybe not now.
No. The only eyeballs on that game would be the ones that Miami rips out of Florida State's skull. That's how bad it's going to be.
Okay.
Max, any thoughts on a couple of close calls in the Big 12 last week? BYU survives 38-35, and their counterparts, Iowa State, the two unbeaten, survive as well 38-35. I know it's not the conference on the forefront of most people's minds. That's very evident in watching a lot of national broadcasts these days, but there is a little bit of excitement, especially there at the top. Any thoughts on the Big 12 and how it's shaping up?
Yeah, I thought extremely impressive for those two. Iowa State to if you throw two pick sixes in a game and you give up 300 yards rushing, there's no way you win that game against anybody in this conference, right? So the resilience by Rocco Becht in that game, I thought his game-winning drive was excellent. That's a team that's really banged up. Their bye's coming at a good time, but they are just a tough team that between the Iowa game and that game, they have figured out a way in some tough spots to rally back and win. That was. I actually did stay up and watch BYU Oklahoma State, and kind of amazing the way that they were able to pull that off in the final minute.
Mm-hmm.
I think Retzlaff is so underrated and so impressive this year. A guy that just really wasn't on any of our radar is could this guy be one of the best in the Big 12? So those are really impressive teams. And I have a question for you guys because I was thinking about this week. This is I don't know that a team in the Big 12 is going to go 12-0. It's possible. It's possible, but I'm not that confident in that at this point. So the scenario I wonder is, could we have, and you could pick any assortment of teams, but I kind of think there's a good chance we're going to have a three-way tie at the top in terms of 11-1 teams. Whether it's Iowa State, BYU, Kansas State, something like that.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be really that's going to be dicey. And then also I think for the Big 12. This is going to be one of those years where you kind of wonder, okay, in that scenario, who is, if you're trying to make the case for a second Big 12 team in the playoff, is it the team that lost the conference title game, or is it the team that stayed at home?
I've been saying,
I think.
Sorry, I've been saying that the best case scenario is that BYU, Iowa State win out because they don't play each other, and then they meet in Arlington and they burn the house down with a hell of a football game that leaves doubts about what would happen if they played again. That would, yeah. I think they've got to leave such little room for the committee to have any kind of an argument that would be the most surefire way, because to your point, any other way, K-State beats Iowa State at the end of the year and then they're suddenly, Iowa State's ding. Like, I don't know how it would work on who would get in, but I think you've got to have 2 unbeatens, and they tear the house down in a 41-40 type of game, something like that. Otherwise, I think you're leaving the door open to get only one team in.
Yeah, or similarly, like if you've got one 12-0 team, can they go to Arlington, play well, end up losing, but then people feel like you still got to put them in, like we saw with TCU a few years ago. Like that's kind of wishful thinking, probably, because then you're in this debate of like, the LSU's and Alabamas and Notre Dame's and all that. There's just going to be a lot of like big brands that are kind of fighting for those last spots. So yeah, I'm fascinated to see not only kind of who ends up in Arlington, but like it's going to be such a rough road for these teams in November. Like who you lose to ends up mattering a ton. Absolutely,
and it should. And it's what you said there. I caught it. I know you got to go, but is that they feel like they have to put them in. Like that's not the discussion for any teams in the SEC or the Big Ten that are pretty big names. It's not that, we have to put them in. They're going to get in, and otherwise you got to kind of fight, scratch, and claw if you're not one of those two conferences. You have very little room for error.
Yeah, and you could say that, this is just like media perception, but I do think it's reality. Like, I think when you watch the SEC and Big Ten title games, they're really going to be inconsequential. Like, there's seeding purposes, but both of those teams are in the playoff, And so I think for the Big 12 and the ACC, the challenge this year is how strong of a foot forward can you put with your number 2 in that game, and if you have an upset, can you, does that mess everything up, or can you get 2 teams in the playoff? I think that's going to be an interesting little debate there, but you need your teams to be as strong as possible when they get there.
No question. Max, thank you very much. Appreciate it as always. What anything you're working on, a story for? Obviously, you got most of them out for this week, but anything juicy for next week?
Got a lot coming. Yeah, stay tuned.
All right. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. I knew he was going to tell us. He's not going to tell us. It would blow it. And then somebody else would start writing about it. But Max Olson with us Thursdays, most every Thursday at 4 o'clock. We're not done.